A boot smashed through the front door of a diner. Glass sprayed across the floor. A man grabbed the waitress by the wrist and dragged her over the counter. She hit the tiles hard and did not scream. Two more men stepped in behind him and blocked the only door. One of them flipped the sign to closed. The waitress wiped blood from her lip and stared at the floor, silent, like she had done this 100 times before. Then a motorcycle engine died in the gravel outside. Boots crossed the lot. A dog growled low and steady. The man who filled that doorway was Cole Rourke, and for 18 months he had crossed 9 states searching for the woman bleeding on that cold floor. So why did she look him dead in the face and swear she had never seen him before? Stay with me on this one. Now let me back up. Because to understand what happened in that diner, you have to understand the 2 days before it and the 18 months before that. Cole Rourke was the president of a motorcycle club. A real one. The kind with a patch that made grown men step off the sidewalk. He was 53, built like a man who had done hard labor his whole life, gray coming in at the temples, hands like bricks. He didn't talk much. In his world, the men who talked the most were usually the ones who did the least. Cole did. That was the difference. He'd buried friends. He'd made peace with men who'd once wanted him dead. He'd learned the slow way that the loudest room is usually the emptiest one, and the man who keeps his mouth shut is the one you watch. He had a dog, too. A German shepherd named Ash. Big animal, black and tan, one ragged ear from a fight years back. Ash rode in a sidecar and had crossed more state lines than most people ever will. Where Cole went, Ash went. That mattered later, so remember it. 18 months before that diner, Cole was engaged to a woman named Delia Vance. And I want you to understand something about Delia, because the whole thing hinges on her. She wasn't club. She was a school teacher. Quiet, funny in a dry way, the kind of woman who read books at the bar while the world got loud around her. Cole had spent 30 years around dangerous people, and the softest thing in his life was her. He knew it. He guarded it. The men in his club used to joke that the president went quiet as a schoolboy the second she walked in. He never denied it. A man like Cole spends his whole life being hard because he has to be. She was the one place he got to set it down. The night he proposed, there was a party at the clubhouse. String lights. A bonfire out back. Delia said yes, and Cole put a ring on her finger, and for about 4 hours he was the happiest he had ever been. Then Delia went outside to get some air. And she never came back. No note. No struggle anybody saw. No body. Her car sat in the lot with the keys still in it. The police worked it for a while, and then quietly filed it under a woman who changed her mind. Ran off. Happens all the time, they said. A biker's fiancé gets cold feet. Cole knew better. A woman doesn't leave her purse, her phone, her car, and a ring she cried over, all to run off into the dark. Somebody took her. And for 18 months he looked. He put the word out on every road, in every chapter, in every truck stop from Bakersfield to Tulsa. He rode until his hands went numb on the grips. He chased down every rumor, every sighting, every drunk who swore he'd seen a woman matching her face. Every one of them turned to nothing. It was like she had stepped off the edge of the world. And the worst part, the part that ate at him at 3 in the morning, was that he'd started to wonder if the police were right. If she really had just left. Then, 2 days before the diner, an old road brother named Bo Hanley called him. Bo ran freight now, hauled loads through the empty parts of Arizona nobody drives for fun. And Bo said, "Cole, I don't want to get your hopes up, but I stopped for coffee in a dead little mining town called Kettle Flats. And there was a waitress there. And brother, I swear on my mother, it was Delia. Thinner, scared, wearing a name tag that said Marie. But it was her." Cole was on the road inside the hour. Kettle Flats was the kind of place that used to matter and didn't anymore. One main street. A shut-down copper operation up on the ridge. A gas station, a bar, a motel, and a roadside diner with a buzzing neon sign. Maybe 300 people, and all of them looked tired. Cole rolled in at noon with Ash in the sidecar, and the whole town seemed to watch him the way a small town watches anything with an engine and out-of-county plates. He parked outside the diner. He sat for a second. His heart was going harder than it had in years. Then he pushed open the door and walked in. And there she was, behind the counter, in a faded uniform. Her hair shorter, dyed a color that wasn't hers. Thinner, like Bo said. There was a bruise going yellow on her forearm. A name tag on her chest that read Marie. And no ring on her finger. Just a pale band of skin where one used to be. Cole stopped breathing. 18 months of searching, and there she was pouring coffee for a trucker like it was any ordinary day. He came to the counter. Ash pressed close to his leg. And Cole said one word, quiet, the way you'd say it to keep a bird from flying off. He said, "Delia." She looked up. And here's the thing. Her eyes met his, and I promise you, for half a second there was a flash of pure terror and love and grief all at once. Her hand jerked, and coffee slopped over the rim of the pot onto the counter. And then something in her face went flat. Cold. Locked down like a steel door. And she looked Cole Rourke dead in the eye and said, "I don't know you, mister." Cole didn't move. Behind him, in the corner booth by the window, 2 men had gone very still. He hadn't clocked them walking in. He clocked them now. One of them had a hand under the table. The other watched Cole in the reflection off the window instead of straight on, which is a thing men do when they've been trained to. And Ash, that dog, turned his head toward that booth and let out a low growl that came up from somewhere deep. That's when Cole understood. She wasn't lying to hurt him. Her hand was shaking against that coffee pot. Her eyes had flicked just once to that booth. She was telling him something. She was telling him to be careful. She was protecting him from whoever was watching. So Cole did the hardest thing he had ever done. He played along. He said, "My mistake, ma'am. Thought you were somebody else." And he sat down at the far end of the counter, and he ordered coffee, and his hands did not shake even though everything in him wanted to tear that room apart. Because he had spent his whole life learning one lesson the hard way. When you don't know how many guns are in the room, you don't reach for yours. You count first. He drank his coffee. He watched the 2 men in the booth watch him. He noticed how the waitress moved, careful, giving that booth a wide berth, keeping the counter between herself and everybody. He noticed she never once looked toward the door, the way a person does when they've stopped believing the door means anything. And he left a big tip, and he walked out slow, and he did not look back at her. But in the gravel lot, he stood next to his bike for a long minute, and his jaw was working, and Ash leaned against his leg. And Cole said, real low, "We found her, boy. Now we find out who took her." He got a room at the motel across the street. Not because he needed sleep. Because it had a window that looked straight at that diner. Kettle Flats had a shape to it, and it didn't take Cole long to see it. He spent the afternoon doing what he did best, which was sitting quiet and letting people talk. He walked into the bar and nursed a beer and listened. He walked into the gas station and bought nothing and listened there too. He bought a tank of gas he didn't need just to keep the pump kid talking. And a picture came together, piece by ugly piece. The town belonged to a man named Marcus Dyer. Dyer wasn't a biker. He wasn't a gangster in the way movies mean it. He was worse because he was patient. Dyer had bought up the paper on half of Kettle Flats when the mine closed. He held the notes on the motel, the bar, the diner, and about 40 families who owed him money they would never climb out from under. He ran loans nobody smart would take, and when folks couldn't pay, he took other things. Their trucks. Their labor. Sometimes their daughters, put to work in his places to burn down a debt that only ever grew. Nobody in that bar would say his name at a normal volume. They'd glance at the door first. They'd drop their voice. A whole town of grown men and women flinching at the sound of one name. The two men in the booth were his. Everybody in that town knew it, and nobody said a word. And Marie, the waitress, the one who never talked about where she came from. She was Dyer's too. Been working off somebody's debt for over a year. Kept close. Kept quiet. Never left town. The pump kid said it plain, without even meaning to. Said she was nice, but you didn't want to be seen talking to her too long, on account of who she belonged to. That word. Belonged. It sat in Cole's chest like a hot coal the rest of the day. He sat on it. He sat on it until the sun went down and the diner emptied out, and the two watchers finally climbed into a truck and drove off toward the ridge, leaving Delia to close up alone. And Cole crossed the street. He went around back, to the alley by the kitchen door, where the dumpster stank and one bulb buzzed overhead. And he waited in the dark until the door opened, and she came out with a bag of trash. And when she saw him, she dropped it. "Don't," she whispered. "Please. You have to go. You have to get on that bike and go, and never come back here." Cole said, "I've been looking for you for a year and a half. I'm not going anywhere." And Delia started to cry, but quiet, the way a person cries when they've learned that even crying can cost you. She said, "You don't understand. If they know who you are, they'll kill you. That's the whole point, Cole. That's why I left. That's why I never called." Cole said, "Then tell me. Right now. Tell me what happened that night." And she looked at him, and she looked at the dog sitting patient at his feet, the dog that had ridden 2,000 miles to find her, and something in her broke open. For the first time in 18 months, she stopped protecting him long enough to tell him the truth. Here is what she told him. It was her brother, Wesley, the screw-up she never talked about at parties. Wesley had drifted through Arizona and gotten himself into Marcus Dyer for a lot of money, gambling and worse. And when Wesley couldn't pay, Dyer's people found out something. They found out whose sister he was. They found out Wesley's sister was engaged to the president of a motorcycle club, a club with money and reach. And Dyer, being patient, being smart, saw an opportunity most men would have been too greedy to see. He didn't want a quick payout. He wanted a person he could keep. The night of the engagement party, 2 of Dyer's men were waiting by her car. They had Wesley in the back seat, beaten half to death, one eye swollen shut, begging her through a busted mouth to just do what they said. And they made her a simple offer. Come quiet, work off the debt, disappear, and never contact anyone from your old life. Do that and Wesley lives, and your biker stays breathing. Make 1 phone call, send 1 letter, breathe 1 word, and we put a bullet in Cole Rourke, and then we come back for you anyway. They knew, you see. They knew Cole would come. They knew he'd bring the whole club and burn the world down looking for her. And they had counted on exactly one thing. That Delia loved him enough to make sure he never found her. Her silence was the only thing keeping him alive. So she went. She got in the truck. She let the man she loved think she'd run off, because a broken heart heals and a bullet doesn't. And she told him what those 18 months were really like. How they moved her twice in the first year town to town, so no trail could set. How they let her keep just enough money to feel like she was almost free, and then found a reason to add to the debt. A broken plate. A slow week. A customer who complained. The number never went down for long. That was the trap, she said. It was never meant to end. It was meant to feel like it was about to end forever. So you'd keep your head down and keep working and never do anything desperate. And she said in that alley, wiping her face, I've almost got it paid, Cole. A few more months. And then maybe they let me go, and I disappear somewhere you'll never find me and you live. That was always the plan. You live. Cole stood there in the dark. And I want to tell you, a lot of men would have exploded right then. Cole didn't. He reached out and he touched her face, just once, and he said, You gave up your whole life to keep me breathing. She nodded. And Cole said, real gentle, Then you already know I'm not gonna let you spend 1 more day paying for it. He told her the plan. It was simple. Tomorrow night, after close, he'd have his bike ready and Bo's rig waiting on the highway. They'd slip out quiet. No fight. No noise. He knew people 3 states over who could make her vanish for real, the good kind of vanish, the free kind. Wesley, too. He'd find the boy and pull him out. They'd be gone before Dyer's men finished their morning coffee, and by the time anybody knew to look, there'd be nothing left to find. Delia almost let herself believe it. She wiped her eyes. She almost smiled. She asked him one small question, whether Ash still slept at the foot of the bed, and when Cole said always, she laughed, one broken little sound, the first laugh she'd had in a year and a half. She went back inside and she flipped the lock and turned off the neon, and for the first time in 18 months, she let herself picture a road out. Cole walked back across the street to the motel. Ash trotted beside him. The night was quiet. The plan was good. Somewhere out on the highway, Bo's headlights were already rolling toward them. It was, for one clean hour, almost over. That's what makes what happened next so hard. Because at 4 in the morning, Cole's window lit up. He was awake instantly, the way old fighters wake, all at once with no fog. Lights swung across the motel wall. Not one truck. 3. They rolled into the diner lot across the street and men climbed out. And this time, it wasn't the 2 watchers from the booth. This was 6 of them. And the man who got out of the lead truck, slow, in a clean pressed shirt at 4 in the morning, that was Marcus Dyer himself. They'd been made. Somebody had seen Cole in that alley. Or seen him ask one question too many in the bar. Maybe the pump kid mentioned the stranger to the wrong person. It didn't matter which. What mattered was that Dyer had come in person, and Dyer never came in person, and that told Cole the whole nature of this thing had just changed. This wasn't 2 thugs guarding a waitress anymore. This was the man who owned the town, arriving with a crew to settle something. And Cole understood, with a cold drop in his gut, that they weren't here to move Delia. They were here to clean up a loose end. Sure. Him. Anybody who'd talk to him. Because a debt you can pay. But a man who knows your whole operation, a man with a club behind him, that's not a debt. That's a threat. And Marcus Dyer settled threats one way. Cole watched them drag Delia out of the little room behind the kitchen where she slept. Watched them throw her into the diner and turn the lights on. And he understood that if he waited for Bo, if he waited for the club, if he waited for anything, she'd be dead before help came. There was no version of this where he made the smart, patient play. The patient play cost her life. This was the one time in 50 years counting first wasn't enough. So he made a choice. Some of you already know what choice, because you've been the person in the room nobody expected to fight back. If that's you, if you know exactly what it costs to stand up when standing up might be the last thing you do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, because these are the only stories I tell. Now let me tell you the rest. Cole didn't call the club. Well, he made one call, 30 seconds, low and fast, and then he put the phone down. Because the club was hours out, and hours was time Delia didn't have. What he had right now, in this dead town at 4 in the morning, was a dog in his hands. And he had spent 50 years learning what to do with both. He crossed the street low in the dark, staying off the gravel where sound carries. Ash moved beside him without a sound that ragged ear back all business. Cole didn't have a gun in his hand. He had one in his boot, and he'd use it if he had to, but a gun in a small room full of Dyer's men just meant everybody died, Delia first. He needed something better than loud. He needed them looking the wrong way. Through the window he could see it. Delia on the floor by the counter. Dyer standing over her, talking, calm, the way patient men talk right before they do something that isn't calm at all. 2 men by the booth. 2 more by the counter. 1 at the door. 6 plus Dyer. And Cole standing outside in the dark with a shepherd, counting, the way he always counted first. Counting exits. Counting hands. Counting which man stood closest to Delia, because that was the man he could not let raise a weapon. Then one of Dyer's men grabbed Delia by the wrist and dragged her up over the counter, and she hit the tiles, and that was the moment. That was the moment from the very start of this story. The boot through the door, the glass, the man flipping the sign. Cole had seen enough. He put Ash on the front door. One command low. And Cole went around to the kitchen door in the back. Here's what 6 armed men in a small room forget. They forget that a room only has so many corners, and when something big and fast comes through the front, every gun in the place swings that way. So when Ash hit that front door at a dead run, 90 pounds of Shepherd crashing through the glass with a sound like the world ending, all 6 men and Dyer spun toward the front. And Cole came through the kitchen behind them. The first man never saw it. Cole took him at the base of the skull with the flat of his fist, and the man dropped like his string got cut. The second turned, and Cole caught his wrist, the one with the gun, and broke it across his knee, and the gun skittered under a booth. 2 down before the room even understood the fight had a second front. Then it got loud. A gun went off, wild into the ceiling, plaster raining down. Ash had a third man by the forearm and was dragging him sideways, and the man was screaming and beating at the dog with his free hand, and it wasn't doing him any good at all. Cole took a punch across the jaw that would have folded a younger man, and gave back an elbow that folded the man who threw it. He was moving through them, not fast but relentless, the way water moves through a broken dam, and every man he reached, he took out of the fight for good. He'd been in more of these than any of them. They fought like men who were used to people being afraid of them. Cole fought like a man who had run out of things to be afraid of 18 months ago in a parking lot with a ring in his hand. One of them got smart and went for Delia instead, figured a hostage was worth more than a punch. He got 2 steps. Ash came off the man he had and hit the new one at the knees, and he went down hard, and Delia scrambled back over the tiles out of his reach. The man with the broken wrist got to the fallen gun, got a hand on it, and Delia on the floor threw the coffee pot. Full scalding straight into his face, and he shrieked and dropped it again, and Cole kicked it away and put him down. And then it was just Dyer. Marcus Dyer had backed against the window, and he'd finally pulled a pistol of his own, a little clean thing that matched his little clean shirt, and he had it pointed at Delia on the floor. And he said, breathing hard, "You take one more step and she's done. You hear me? One more step." The room went still. Ash stood over an unconscious man, teeth bared, that low growl rolling. 5 of Dyer's men were down or crawling. And Cole Rourke stood in the middle of the wreckage with blood on his knuckles and looked at the man who had stolen 18 months of his life. And Cole said, "You spent a year and a half telling her that her silence was the only thing keeping me alive." He took a slow step. "You had it backwards." He took another. "My silence was the only thing keeping you alive. And you just used it up." Dyer's hand shook. And here's the thing about men like Dyer. They are only brave when the odds are stacked and the victim is small. Alone in a broken room, facing something they can't buy or threaten, they come apart. His eyes flicked to the door. And that flick was all Cole needed. Cole crossed the last of that floor before Dyer could decide, and his hand closed over the pistol and turned it up and away, and the shot went into the ceiling. And then Cole took the gun and took Dyer by the throat and put him down on the counter so hard the whole thing rang. And he held him there. And Dyer, who owned the town, who owned the paper on 40 families, who had made a school teacher disappear to work off her brother's debt, looked up into the face of Cole Rourke and finally understood what patient really meant. Cole didn't kill him. I want you to know that, because it matters to who Cole was. He held Dyer down and he looked at Delia and he said, "You want him dead. Say the word. It's yours to say." And Delia, bloody, shaking, standing now, looked at the man who had made her life a cage for 18 months. And she said, "No. I want him alive. I want him to lose everything he took, the slow way in a cell, knowing a woman he owned is the one who put him there." So that's what happened. Bo's rig rolled in 10 minutes later, and behind it, closer than Cole knew, came the sound Kettle Flats had never heard. Because Cole had made one call before he crossed that street, and a club doesn't let its president ride into a war alone. Headlights came down off the highway in a long line, a dozen and then 2 dozen, engines shaking the windows, and the men of Cole's chapter filled that dead little town like a flood. And with them, because Cole was smart and had spent the afternoon learning the shape of things, came a county sheriff from 2 towns over who had wanted Marcus Dyer for 6 years and never had a witness brave enough to talk. They had witnesses now. They had a diner full of Dyer's men and Dyer's gun and Dyer's ledger, the book he kept in his truck with every debt and every threat written in his own patient hand. 40 families worth of chains, all documented, all in evidence by sunup. Delia sat on the tailgate of Bo's truck as the sky went gray over the ridge. Somebody had put a jacket over her shoulders. Ash lay across her feet and would not move, and she had one hand buried in the fur of his neck, the ear that got torn years ago, and she kept petting it like she was making sure he was real. Cole sat beside her. Neither of them said much. Some things don't need a lot of talking. Finally she said, 18 months. I really thought I was doing the right thing. Keeping you alive by making you think I didn't love you. Cole said, you were doing the bravest thing I ever heard of. He looked out at the ridge going pink. You just had one part wrong. You thought the way to save me was to leave. He took her hand, the one with the pale band where a ring used to be. Only thing that was ever gonna save either of us was you letting me find you. They found Wesley 3 days later alive, in a work camp Dyer ran up in the hills, one of a dozen men paying off debts with their bodies. He walked out thin and sun-scorched and wept when he saw his sister. The debt died with Dyer's arrest. All of them did. 40 families in Kettle Flats woke up one morning that week and found out, quietly, that they didn't owe anybody anything anymore. Nobody ever quite explained how. But folks noticed the club stayed a few days, and folks noticed the sheriff took a lot of boxes out of Dyer's office, and folks put it together. Cole and Delia didn't stay. That town had too much in it for her. They rode out on a clear morning, Delia behind Cole on the bike now, arms around him, Ash grinning in the sidecar with his tongue out and his one ragged ear flat in the wind. The whole chapter rode with them a while, filling the highway, and then peeled off one by one to their own roads until it was just the 3 of them again, the way it started. They got married that fall. Small. Out back of the clubhouse, string lights, a bonfire, same as the night that got interrupted 18 months before. Cole put a new ring on her finger, because the old one had been sold in a pawn shop in Phoenix a long time ago, and this one, he told her, nobody was ever going to take off her again. And here's the part I keep coming back to. That first day in the diner, when she looked him dead in the eye and said, "I don't know you, mister." Cole told me once that it was the worst thing he ever heard in his life. 4 words that undid a year and a half of hope. But he came to understand it was also the bravest thing she ever said to him. Because she said it to save his life. She looked at the only man she'd ever loved and lied straight to his face, because loving him meant protecting him, even from herself. A lot of people spend their lives looking for love that big and never find it. Cole found it behind the counter of a rundown diner in a town nobody could point to on a map, wearing another woman's name, flinching at shadows. And he had the sense to see, in the shake of a hand against a coffee pot and one flick of the eyes toward a booth, that "I don't know you" meant "I love you too much to let them hurt you." He never let her out of his sight again. And Ash, that dog, lived 4 more good years and slept every night of them at the foot of their bed, on Delia's side. Because he'd crossed 2,000 miles to find her once, and he wasn't about to lose